It's Caroline, and I would like to welcome you today to my podcast, One Opinion from Europe. In this podcast, I give you my European opinion on current events in America. Today, specifically, I will be taking a look at the liar-in-chief, obviously Donald Trump. We will be taking a look at his career under this nickname. How effective has he been? And then I would like to take a look at the big lie, which I feel has comparisons here in Germany. Then, of course, I don't feel that America has a monopoly on lying. We also lie here in Europe. And I'll be taking a brief look at Germany and at Great Britain. I grew up in Great Britain and I now call Germany my home, so I have a fair bit of insight into these countries. And then finally, I would like to take a look at where one significant lie which he told during his campaign is taking us into the future. Okay, so let's get started. One of Donald Trump's many nicknames is the liar-in-chief. Now, in his first administration, the Wall Street Journal claimed that he had told over 30,000 different lies. And I don't think he is disappointing us in this way also in his second administration. Various psychiatrists have diagnosed him with a malignant narcissist personality, and part of this personality is being a pathological liar. And he shows us this every day in every speech that he gives. There are untruths and falsehoods, over-exaggerations. This is whatever, the best ever, the longest ever. Nobody's ever seen anything more than this. We had to sit through last week 1 hour and 48 minutes of the State of the Union address. Now, David Roskopf told the Daily Beast, if you took every true thing President Donald Trump said during Tuesday's State of the Union address and tattooed it onto the genitalia of a flea, there would still be room for the Gettysburg Address, which I think sums it up quite nicely. Now, lies which he was telling about the investment claims, the 80 trillion investment coming in from abroad, the plummeting inflation, gas prices being at an all-time low of 185. Now, I would love it if somebody could tell me where that gas station is offering gas at 185 a gallon. The one that I, as a mathematician, always have a laugh at is that his prescription drug prices have gone down by at least 600%. Now, we all know that that is not true and that is not even possible. He also ended 8 wars. That has also been disproved. Ukraine aid at being over 300 billion, which we know is only at maximum 130 billion. The tariff revenues, now this is an all-time favorite of mine, which he tells people are being paid by foreign countries, whereas we all know that that is not true, but he continues with this lie. And there's also the rampant cheating at elections, in which I feel he is setting us up for something to come. And one very sad case, I thought, was the case of Irina Sarutska, which he used as an example of migrants murdering people. Now, it turns out, if you look at the actual case, Irina Sarutska was indeed killed by an American citizen. So that is a lie which he should not be allowed to get away with, in my view. Let's take a look at one of Donald Trump's most famous lies, namely the big lie. When people talk about the big lie, we all know what is meant. It is the claim that Donald Trump made that there was widespread fraud at the 2020 election and he was the true winner. Historically, the term the big lie originates from Adolf Hitler in 1925 when he wrote Mein Kampf. It was defined as a lie so colossal that no one could have the impudence to distort the truth so infamously. I think that also fits Donald Trump's big lie. It was used by Adolf Hitler to falsely accuse Jews of blaming World War I defeat on the hero General Erich Ludendorff. And this lying technique was refined by Goebbels, operating on the principle that if you repeat a lie frequently enough, people will eventually believe it. And this is also a technique which is widespread throughout the GOP. Donald Trump's sustained narrative that the 2020 election was stolen through widespread fraud is obviously false. 62 lawsuits were filed in both state and federal courts, and nearly all of them failed. Most of the cases were dismissed because of lack of failure to provide evidence of fraud that would have changed the election outcome. Despite claims of fraud in the media, various lawyers would not go as far as to actually claim fraud in front of a judge because they were obviously worried about consequences and sanctions that might fall upon them. We also know that Donald Trump's claims that the election was rife with fraud is not correct because there were exhaustive hand counts and audits performed on some of the election results, most famously in Georgia and in Arizona, and only minuscule variations which were consistent with human error were found. In fact, the famous Cyber Ninja audit in Arizona even found 356 votes more for Joe Biden than in the original count. Chris Krebs, who was director of cybersecurity at the election, also claimed that this was the most secure election in American history, and Donald Trump did not thank him for this. Similarly, with his AG Bill Barr publicly claiming he had no evidence of fraud on a scale that could have made a difference. So why does Donald Trump keep up with this narrative of the big lie? First of all, many people still believe this big lie. As Goebbels did, it has been repeated over and over and over, and it has also been a prerequisite that you have to believe this big lie before attaining any sort of position in Donald Trump's administration. Secondly, his psychology as a malignant narcissist, he cannot admit that he has lost to Joe Biden. This is just something which doesn't exist in his mind. There is evidence that originally he knew he had lost the election, but now I believe that he also believes that he actually won and it was fraudulent. And finally, the big lie also helps him for his ambition of winning future elections, most famously now the 2026 midterm elections coming up. He is setting the ground, as he did in 2020 with the claims of fraudulent elections, to disclaim any win by the Democrats at the midterms. Now, American politicians definitely do not have a monopoly on lying. Here in European politics, we all know the politicians lie to us, but they can have serious consequences if they get caught. First of all, reputationally, lying is frowned upon here in Europe, specifically here in Germany. If a politician is caught lying about history or even propagating Nazi lies, they may well end up in prison. There have also been cases where politicians have lied on their resume or they have taken things out of context and they have been forced to resign. But we see that culturally, lying is much more acceptable in American politics than it is here in Germany. For example, our German media are legally bound to neutrality and aggressive fact-checking, as opposed to the heavily partisan media that we find in the US. If we take a look at British politics, the concept of lying is traditionally handled through a strict code of conduct. For example, Boris Johnson was forced to resign after his Partygate scandal. He had been lying about illegal gatherings during the strict COVID prohibition rules, and ultimately in 2023 he had to resign. One of the most consequential lying episodes in British history was the run-up to the Brexit vote. In the Brexit campaign, many significant lies were told. For example, that Great Britain had to submit £350 million pounds per day to the EU. This just was not true. And there was also the claim that once Great Britain is out of the EU, it would be very easy to come up with a trade deal with the EU. Now, in fact, the trade deal with the EU was a very prolonged negotiation of 4 years. And also, one of the main reasons why people voted for the Brexit was to lower immigration. Initially, immigration was lowered, but then similarly, as we see in the US, where the immigrants were not there to do the jobs which the British people did not want to do, like working in the fields, working as nurses, working as plumbers, there was a significant lack of people to do these jobs. And so people are now regretting the Brexit, and it is claimed that 80% of people under 24 would like to come back into the EU. So the lying of the Brexit campaign has had significant results, negative results on the British economy. It is assumed that GDP is 4% lower than it would have been had Great Britain remained within the EU. I would like to finally close this episode by discussing one of Donald Trump's most insidious lies that he made during his campaign as US president. He promised that he would be the peace president and resolve the Ukraine-Russia war within a period of 24 hours. Now, of course, we've all seen his blithering and blustering attempt to resolve that war, which has brought nothing but unrest, and we are no single centimeter further towards peace. But more insidiously, it goes on. He has renamed the Department of Defense into the Department of War. Now, why would he do that? Now, we see he has made attacks on several foreign countries, amongst them Venezuela, Syria, the Yemen, and now finally his second attack on Iran. And this has been a major attack, and as we see now it is coming out, this attack was on the behest of Israel. Donald Trump is being seen as Netanyahu's lapdog, who is prepared to cause civilian damage. Over 100 school children were killed in southern Iran. And various US military personnel, today the count is 6 people so far, have been killed. But more than that, and I think this wasn't expected, Iran has caused significant chaos by attacking all the different countries in the Middle East. They have even attacked an American base on Cyprus, which is bringing it onto our European doorstep. Now, here in Europe, my opinion is that we are culturally against war, and especially in a legal war, such as Donald Trump is now starting. Due to our history, both in Germany and in Great Britain, politicians have publicly claimed that we will not be supporting the US in this war. We learned our lesson during the Greenland debacle, where Donald Trump claimed that we had not assisted the US in Afghanistan, whereas we had lost many people in the fighting in Afghanistan and in Iraq. So unfortunately, I can just only hope from my European perspective that the Democrats managed to get people to support their bill and go back to negotiations with Iran, and somehow we can get this madness stopped. I really do wish you all the best and hope that you manage to find a solution where you can stop one of Donald Trump's most insidious campaign lies. I will be making a separate episode on our European view of this matter. Now, if you are interested in what I have to say, please feel free to click and to subscribe and leave me comments if you have any suggestions or questions. I will be quite happy to start up a dialogue with you. Thank you very much and take care. Bye.